And Venkatesh,
Sure.
let's get started. On behalf of the Karate Labs team, Peter, myself, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And Venkatesh, thank you in advance. Of course, we'll thank you at the end, but thank you in advance for being here and giving us this platform and giving us your time. As we have onboarded customers and continue to onboard customers, one of the repeated requests we get is, hey, can we learn from the experience of others, of them having onboarded karate, so that we don't end up making the same mistakes? And that started actually in a slow and steady manner. Our customer journey webinars, we started with SAP last year in September, learned from that, did the next one in December with FIS Global. We are kicking off, you're the opening batsman for 2023 in Jan. Next month we have Trivago, and like this we intend to have more and more of leaders like yourself sharing their experience. So thank you for being here. If I may just take a moment and introduce you before we dive right into it. Venkatesh comes with 2 decades of experience in software development and quality assurance. In his current role as Director of Software and QA at Oracle, he is spearheading the implementation of automated quality gates for a multi-tenant microservice-based platform. He is a thought leader in microservice testing and has shared his experience as a conference speaker in forums across the globe. Venkatesh's engineering team has been using Karate over the last 3 years for their component tests as well as integration tests. So Venkatesh, diving right into it, tell us about your journey. What brought you to the world of development and your experience with test automation?
Sure. Thank you, Kapil and Peter, for this opportunity. So I actually started my career as a software developer, and almost like 2 years, the first 2 years of my career at Infosys, I was in development in variety of languages, JavaScript. There's a language called Delphi, which is more of an object-oriented language, and then SQL. And then later I got an opportunity to work in test automation because they wanted someone with development experience for test automation. That was a very old tool, Rational Robot. I'm not sure if most of you would have heard of that. So that was actually a project at Fidelity. So that was my first experience in test automation. And then later I kind of tried myself to learn new technologies and even like multiple tools, open source as well as variety of commercial tools. And I was also moved into other roles like leading a 100+ member testing practice. And over the last 4 years, when I joined Oracle, I joined as a QA director, but later I had other software developers as well as software development managers working under me. So life has now come to a full circle. And where to I started, like development plus testing.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you for that, Venkatesh. And your role at Oracle is Director of Software Engineering and QA.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of customers, but very seldom do we see one senior leader responsible for both the functions. So the question is, so is QA necessary, or should developers do their own testing, Venkatesh?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That's widely debated across the industry, right? Whether it's depending on the organization, even whether it's a small organization or like under 100,000 member organization. And even if you serve like 10 customers or millions of customers, ultimately what we need to do is, what matters is your test coverage, because we want to set the quality products to our customers. So the focus should be on the test coverage rather than like who's doing it. So that's where we, in our team at Oracle, what we try to do is we wanted to focus on the test coverage and also early test automation, enhance the quality of tests, because that's going to help the productivity as well as quality of both the developers as well as the testing teams.
Wonderful. So you say basically shift left does work. And can you throw more light on what led you to find Karate? Which features of Karate do you use?
Sure. So when we started this program for building a very large-scale microservice platform here in our team, so we were looking for a test automation tool which serves our needs. We want to accelerate. Our primary goal was to automate first and automate fast. We want to achieve automation which can support our rapid deployment needs. And incidentally, the Karate tool was recommended not by the QA team, but from one of the architects who learned about this tool. That was like almost 4 years ago. It came through word of mouth, from not from a testing but a development lead. So we wanted to evaluate karate tools, because in my past experience, I've worked with multiple commercial tools as well as open source tools. So initially we thought we'll look at rest assured, but we did a very extensive evaluation of karate in multiple parameters, like support for development, support for our component tests, and other factors like what's the productivity. Our main goal was productivity and maintaining our test coverage. That's where we started with the karate.
And can you deep dive deeper into when you say karate? Now you define the journey and how you found it, but
Yeah.
would you like me to use some of the inputs that you shared with us to walk the
Sure.
audience through to the extent of your use of karate?
Sure. Yeah, we can go through the slides.
Okay, excellent. I'm just pulling those up, Venkatesh. This one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, when in any of in software industry parlance, right, whenever somebody talks about shift left, they either talk from in a very linear fashion, like left to right, or in terms of pyramids or funnel, right? So that's where they measure the test coverage. But here, actually, what I'm trying to represent is I want to give a very simplistic 360-degree view of testing, because we need to test from the design to deployment. That should be our focus. So at the start of the development, at the start of the design and development phase, what we did was we leveraged karate to enhance our unit test, right? We wanted to go beyond unit tests. We want to build rich component tests. The difference between unit test and a component test is more acceptance driven, more something which can be verified, more from a business logic perspective. And that's where we use the power of karate to use the mocks for testing all the dependency of the services. And we also integrated these component tests in our build pipeline, and we added automated quality gates. Like, for example, if the coverage is falling below a certain percentage, the test would fail. And we leverage that feature of code coverage, Karate's code coverage, with Jacoco Maven plugin. That's a very simple Maven plugin which helps us to measure the code coverage. So that's where we used it to build extensive and robust component tests. And coming to contractors, the problem we are trying to solve is we want to find if anyway, the product which we are working is a very complex microservice based platform, and we want to make sure that we don't break the contracts with other services, the interactions and dependencies with other services. That's where we use the power of JSON schema validation. If you look at any of the other open source tools, right, it takes extensive code to write JSON schema validation, whereas with a tool like Karate, we can just do it in a kind of a 1 or 2 lines of code, right? That's a very simple, powerful feature which we have leveraged here. And once we have all those rich component and contract tests, we extended those tests and reused and enhanced it to build more robust integration tests. That's where we use the power of Karate's data-driven, right? We have the ability to have CSV file. We can have data-driven CSV files, and we can also use JSON files also. So once we build those integration tests, the next phase would be to deploy it in the other environments, progression, and moving towards production. So we use quite a few features like the tags, right? We have the ability to tag a karate test to run in a specific environment. You can run it in your development environment, smoke test, or even a pre-production environment. One point I would like to add is the design of your test architecture, right? You need to design it in such a way that you have clear boundaries between your test script, data, and your environment. That would be a huge win for your maintenance effort going forward, because that's many of the teams which in my past, right, they struggle because of this lack of separation of data and environment as well as your test case. So that's one of the biggest advantage which I saw in Karate.
That's wonderful. Peter, this must be heartwarming for you to see such an extensive use of karate, right? By such a well-renowned and mature organization like Oracle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many things ticked off, like um, board coverage also, Jacoco. Yeah, that's kind of rare. I don't see too many teams actually achieve that because it takes a little bit of integration and hooking into your existing code and instrumenting it and so on. Um, yeah, go ahead. I mean,
Sure.
this is the second slide. Go ahead, Venkatesh.
Yeah. So if you look at any of the modern state-of-the-art cloud-based applications, right, they start with API first design. That's the strategy which most of the development teams are going forward. And the biggest advantage of this model is that we have the ability to write test cases upfront, the test automation also upfront. I'm sure most of you would have learned the terminologies of test-driven development, right? So here we have the opportunity to write test, not just test cases, but also test automation, because Karate has that inbuilt feature of mocks where we can leverage it to write test cases, generate those test cases from the API specification, and then go through the build and deployment cycle, right? We have to go through this iterative process. So the real strength of any test automation is we need to go through this feedback loop, right? When we build a test and then enhance the test, add more coverage. That's the normal life cycle which we have to follow.
Well,
Brilliant.
that's good.
Quick question. Yeah, sorry. I mean, this is great, Venkatesh. I mean, I see all the NFRs also, right? Performance, security, and code coverage, and it certainly comes across that you have lots of automation in place, probably to the extent where even your deployments and all that are automated. One question I have, just curious, and probably the question from many others is, are there things that you cannot automate, right? I'm sure your goal is to achieve maximum coverage so that less human intensive effort is required. But are there things in your scheme of things that you cannot automate and then you really have to have some humans do it? Do you have any thoughts on that front?
I would go by a very simple principle that anything which you don't want to repeat is like don't automate, right? Anything which you want to repeatedly cover and test, or try to automate. Some people going for this ROI based approach. So again, it's a trade-off of your cost versus the effort which you want to invest in.
Brilliant. Venkatesh, I have a question. We met over a year ago when we incorporated Karate Labs in 2021. And I remember that time Karate was already on version 1.2.0, if my memory serves me right. And I remember our first meeting where you said, we are very happy with 0.96. So has your team upgraded to the latest version? We are on, I think, 1.31 now.
We are currently using 1.1. We are using 1.1, and even I would say even 1.96 version is was we used it till last year, and it's amazing. It's been great using that.
Yeah, you're not alone there, so thank you for that. Has your team tried our official IntelliJ and Visual Studio Code plugins?
We are actually using the legacy Gherkin support from IntelliJ. That has some basic features where we can run the test case, and it debugging and everything. It provides a feature. We haven't tried this new plugin yet, but I looked at the features. It has some really cool, exciting features like your color coding and like even like autocorrect, right? So auto suggestions and all that. That's a really cool feature to have.
No, there's more coming. There's a big update coming next month, which will have the ability to also import Postman collections, Open API specifications, curl and HAR files, and then generate Karate tests and few more. We'll certainly keep you updated. So, having been through this journey, is there anything about Karate that you felt when you set up was frustrating for the team? Because Karate, the virality of Karate is it's self-serve. It's so easy, and Peter, along with the community, pretty much then also single-handedly has always answered questions on Stack Overflow, our dedicated Slack channel for the power users. But is there anything that you feel people should be mindful of on the ease of setting up Karate? What advice would you offer teams onboarding Karate? Should they onboard specific features so that they have that eureka moment and moment of impact sooner rather than later? Over to you.
Yeah, I actually like that the extent of documentation which karate had right initially. So that actually it was a huge productivity boost for our team. The level of details of documentation, examples, and also follow-up questions on Stack Overflow. That was very extensive. Kind of the attention to detail was amazing. So that was a huge kind of value add for our team. So definitely that helped us.
So if I'm hearing you say that what you're advising teams onboarding karate is, please go through the documentation first. It's extensive, it's comprehensive, and that would give you enough insight for you to take the right path in developing a POC, working on that, and having your learnings from that. Is that a fair summary, Venkatesh?
Yes, and I also want to add, I would recommend the teams to look into their areas of what are their pain areas or where they think the ROI would be more. Like, so for example, if the team wants to start with karate for integration tests, so I would say start with that and then slowly work backwards and go into your API design and like generating the test cases from APIs. So it depends on the areas of improvement which the team can kind of, I would say that teams come up with a list and then take it one at a time. So depending on the size of the organization.
Excellent. No, that's brilliant. Peter will resonate with this. We have had a mix. We have met with over close to 300 companies in the last 14 months. And there are some like you who say, man, documentation is bang on the money. And some says, oh, it's, it's a long README file. Can you put it in bite-sized chunks for us? And it's a tough one. But it's great to get this feedback from you in an open forum, particularly as a starting point. And I take zero credit for it. I know Peter has painstakingly over the last 5.5 years built that documentation. And when somebody says it's too big, it's like telling that your child is not good at school. So it's good feedback. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
And to add, one of the reasons, just digging into that documentation piece, and yes, we've heard a lot of varying opinions on the documentation. One of the practices we follow now is, we followed ever since we started is, whenever there's a change made to the core framework, because the documentation is this one massive, monolithic README file, we actually have the discipline to update the README at the same time the code is updated. And there's a very interesting advantage for this, which is, people who use karate can be confident that the README reflects, it's up to date with the code, right? Which is kind of a lot of open source projects don't get this right, in my opinion. But anyway, we talked about documentation and your experience with karate, Venkatesh. One question for you is that, do you have any advice for us, the team at Karate Labs in general? Go ahead.
I think the focus, right? So I would say, like, if you look at the entire software industry, right? So it's all like, we all want more, not just the QA, but more automation and more automation. I think there's just a poll come up. Should I answer? Wait for it, or
you can wait for that.
Okay.
People can take the time to respond to it. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
I don't want to forget it, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I think we have to look at quality from a holistic perspective, not from just testing, but also look at how do we improve the quality of our coverage, right from a development phase design. I think it's the right step that you guys are working on the future enhancements as well as your current like coverage, right? You generating the test from API design, API specifications. That's going to be a huge win. And if you look at how the software industry is moving forward, like ChatGPT and all those things, right? So definitely there's a lot of scope for bringing in AI as well as any other innovation into the testing tools.
That's brilliant. Go ahead, Peter. You want to say something?
Yeah, in fact, today someone was pinging me on Twitter and saying, I was able to get ChatGPT to write a karate test, and it was interesting. He actually showed me a sample, and it's pretty good. So yeah, it's kind of scary and interesting at the same time. One question is, if you have one message, Venkatesh, to give to the entire software testing community, what would it be?
Yeah, actually, even I was playing around with the ChatGPT like over the weekend, and I asked it to write test cases, and it gave me good JUnit test cases. So definitely it's kind of, I would say, like there's usually a question that you write like is AI going to replace So where people are, the answer is clearly no, right? Because the person who's going to use AI is going to have a huge competitive advantage. Yes, that's going to be that would be a kind of a no-brainer answer. Um, and coming to the team, like if you want to share, if I want to share any advice, I would say like enhance your skill set. People, to anyone, right? Anyone who's listening or anyone who's new to the industry, enhance your skill set, not just kind of testing, but probe into your application details and also architecture. Learn about software architecture, the different components of architecture, and broaden your skill set and have that questioning mind, right? Why do we do this? Why is it being done? That's going to help a long way in the growth of any of the team members.
No, brilliant. Before I comment on that, there are two questions on the forum. One is from an anonymous participant. The question is, did you use Karate apart from testing REST services such as database DB connections, Kafka, event-driven components?
Yes. So we use Karate for testing the DB related components. In fact, there are quite a few features where this is where the interoperability with Java comes, right? So we can call Java functions. You can run SQL statements, compare, do a match and compare. We can do all those operations. The seamless integration with Java will help. And coming to event-driven, right? Whether it's Kafka or any other provider, event-driven provider. So we still have the ability to test all those kind of services. Yes, in fact, in our current project also, we test event-driven and messages. So Karate has that feature, right? Polling feature. When you run a get method, you can do a polling and then find out like whether that event has got processed. So yes, it is being supported.
Excellent. There's a question by Stefan Schuler. Can you say something about certain tools and why you decided not to use them? For example, Cucumber, Selenium, Pact, etc. Because I think you mentioned Rest Assured also.
Great. Yeah. So one challenge I had with Selenium earlier in some of my previous programs was we spent more time in maintaining the test and like after creating, right? There was a significant maintenance. It was a huge maintenance effort using Selenium. That was one issue which we had because the UI is going to constantly change, right? So unless you have some quick productivity boosters, it's going to be very hard to use Selenium. So we had that issue. Pact, I have used Pact in some of my earlier projects, but the benefit of Karate over other tools is you can use Karate has as mocks. You can write JSON schema validation plus your integration test. So having one tool which can do a breadth of variety of tests is a huge productivity boost, almost like a force multiplier.
Fantastic. Follow-on question. Oh, there's one more question that's come up. I think it's a follow-on. Oh, no. Carlos Matal. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your surname right. Could Peter point out what part of documentation we should review for validating Kafka messages?
Oh, wow. In fact, yeah, thanks for asking the question, Carlos. The first response I have is, if you can go to Stack Overflow and do a search for Karate and Kafka, you should be able to get a few messages. There's a friend of mine, Saumendra Das, again, shout out to Das, who has created a GitHub sample of how to test Kafka along with Karate. So again, a quick Google search should get you to that. Or I honestly don't remember if it's in the documentation, but worst case, just ping us somehow or ask a new question on Stack Overflow, you will get the answer. So the answer is yes, there are plenty of options. As Venkatesh said, because Karate can call Java code, it's actually quite straightforward to call Kafka, and listening to Kafka is also possible because Karate has good support for async code. So hopefully that answers your question, Carlos. Thanks again.
Venkatesh, a question for you. It's interesting. One of the poll questions is, what features would you like to see in Karate? And 64% have said, so the options are API coverage, recording API tests, AI-based test generation, API documentation, API security testing. So I'll not bias your opinion on the percentages, but what would you say is a good feature you would like to see in Karate?
Um, yeah, I would go with the audience. Whatever.
API coverage, recording
coverage.
API tests, AI-based test generation, API documentation, API security test. Which is the first one that jumps out at you?
Yeah, AI-based seems to be interesting.
Sorry?
AI-based.
AI-based. That is the biggest. 64% have said AI-based test generation. Then there's a majority that has said API security testing. Then comes API coverage, recording API tests, and API documentation. So the good thing for people listening is API coverage, recording API tests, and API documentation is coming. I hope some of you are joining our product launch next week. That will give far more insight into what is coming out next week, and more importantly, what is the roadmap for 2023. So yeah, please continue. There are just 60% who have completed the poll, so please continue. So thanks for that, Venkatesh. Venkatesh, well, I'm sure Peter has a few more questions. Is there anything about karate that frustrated your team? Particularly the manual. Did the manual testers feel intimidated, or once they got a hang of it, they said, oh, you know what, I don't feel intimidated at all? Or the developers felt that, hey, this is just too easy. I'm far more capable of doing much more. Any views on that?
I think from a development, if you look at a non-programmer, so definitely there were a few functional folks in our team who are very comfortable in using karate because of the business language syntax. It's more like a BDD driven thing, not exactly, but it's more of a BDD syntax. So definitely it was easier for onboarding non-functional folks. And at the same time, developers, it almost served like a best of both worlds. Like developers use the power of the features, like for example, your matching, assertions, data driven. Like for example, if you have 10 rows in a JSON, and if you want to match, you don't have to write lines of code. You can do a match each and validate everything. So it's a huge productivity boost not for the non-programmers, but for developers as well. And then the seamless integration, containerization, you can run all the tests in a pipeline or even a Kubernetes cluster. It's both developer friendly as well as non-programmer friendly, I would say.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the poll questions we asked was, or rather have asked, is what are the challenges you want to address? And the number one response is reduce manual testing and automate more. 73% so far have said that. And then it's a chicken and egg, right? Because you need your manual testing, but at the same time, when we were at StarWest, I remember having a discussion with some very experienced manual testers. And when they saw what karate did, the first response of this group was, hey, I don't need to know a language to be able to write this. I can do this. You think there is more we need to do, or forums like this webinar, etc., is what is needed for the virality and the ease of getting started with karate, Venkatesh?
Yeah, I think forums like this definitely would help kind of to broadcast that message, because as I said, right, so when we learned about karate just from a word of mouth, not even Google search. So that's the power of now we have all this social media, and definitely there are more experienced users of karate, so that's definitely going to help.
No, excellent. If anybody, there's one more question that's come out. 1 minute, Venkatesh. The same, I think, probably a UI to trigger these tests by a non-technical person, a la Postman. Is that coming?
Maybe you can answer that, Kapil. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, it is coming. Very, very soon. We don't know who you are, but I think your questions are absolutely brilliant. Please, we encourage you to join our launch next week, and do give your name, because we wouldn't know that you are the anonymous person in today's webinar. But a simple answer is absolutely, it is coming. There are many users that have also, enterprise users that have been trialing the features. They have given us a lot of feedback, particularly with regard to the ability to import Postman and pre-request scripts within Postman also. There's lots coming. And in an absolute simple, no-code manner, which makes it easy for non-technical persons. Peter, did I pass the test with that exam?
Flying colors.
No, excellent question. So there was something, Venkatesh, yeah, I was going to ask you that there are many times we get requests, hey, please have a paid training for karate. Okay, is that something that we need to get into? Because the way we see it is, there are very good evangelists of karate out there. There are good courses on Udemy. But I think it's again that balance of, hey, can Peter, the creator of karate, host one online training and some of us can join and we'll be more than happy to pay? You think with the documentation coupled with possible training, uh, is that something that we at Karate Lab should look at as we are scaling enterprise users to widen the, expand the use of karate?
I think the current set of documentation would definitely help. We may be more videos. I've seen a few initial videos, and that helped us to kind of bootstrap everything, our onboarding to karate. So maybe a little more of documentation, maybe compiling it more. That would definitely help. In more videos, right? Not just documentation, but more videos would definitely help the team.
And you think when there are now we have a lot of individuals and enterprises subscribing to our IntelliJ and IntelliJ plugin and Visual Studio Code extension, and we are toying with the idea of developing this in IDE pop-ups or tutorials. You think something like that would help early adopters on board?
Yes. I think for new customers, that would be a good value add. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Something we have. Yeah. Good. There's lots to be done. If you see Peter look 10 years older in 2 months, you can imagine why the team and him are coding away. Hey, Venkatesh, what is it that you do in your free time? Other than
Yeah.
other than your magic of being in such forums, but what are your other passions?
Usually, over the last couple of years, I actually restarted my habit of reading books again. So I after a long break, I started reading again. So one of my favorite book the last 1 year is a book on Nike, Shoe Dog, a book on how
Phil
they
Knight.
started Nike. Phil Knight's amazing book, his journey towards entrepreneurship, and it's a very amazing insight on like how that was one of my hot favorite books.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. In fact, today only somebody posted about the rules he would publish. I can't even call it rules, but more philosophies of what people should drive within Nike. So I know and thanks for sharing that. There's one more question that's come up on the forum. Mohan Raj Kirupakkaran. Can we launch a karate certification program which will give a roadmap of topics to master, and those that are certified can boast their accomplishment? Also helps them land the job. Nothing new here, just what every tool companies do, like Tosca, etc. Peter, why don't you take this one and comment on it?
Oh man, yeah, just like every two. We really want to thanks Mohan for the question, and certainly we have been considering the idea of certification. The fact is, we really want to do this in a slightly better way. We want to just push the boundaries of what I think exists today. To give you one example of how we are thinking about this, I would love for a way to administer the certification where person taking the test or being evaluated should be able to actually live code a little bit. Maybe not, it's not practical to do a lot, but it should be interactive. There should be a real karate compiler in the works when you do this training. I have some thoughts around it. So stay tuned for that. But certainly certification is a great option for us to consider.
Venkatesh, because we have time at hand. Oh, Sharada has asked a question. I feel developers still look down on no-code tools. Your take?
I wouldn't look at distinction between code and no code, right? So all a developer would like to do is improve your test coverage, right? So whether it's a developer or a tester, all the focus is on improving the test coverage and make your productivity, accelerate your productivity. That's the key question, right? So whatever is brought into the table, is it going to satisfy these both conditions? So then definitely yes. When I use some of those no code tools, the initial set of test cases used to be very easy, but later you have to write complex code and to make it work in a very hard way. But as a standard, it has to be very uniform, right? That's what I think the question is around, right? So it should not be just no code for your simple use cases, but is it going to help you accelerate your productivity, all your real life cases? Then yes, it's going to help. Yes.
Peter, your take to Sharada on this?
Oh yeah, I mean, I agree with Venkatesh, right? And the way I look at it is, yeah, anything that enhances your productivity as a developer is always welcome. And one way I think about it is comparing how would you code in just plain textpad or notepad versus using an IDE. An IDE is actually giving you a lot of features as a user interface to make the business of developing code or shipping code faster. So I believe now, to be honest, I think there are not too many examples of no-code tools that appeal to developers. If you set aside IDEs, and I think that's the problem. And I agree that's a challenge to create a no-code interface that developers will love and appreciate because it's actually making sense and doing the things that a developer wants to achieve with as less friction as possible. It's a challenge. Not many tools pull this off. We would like to try for sure.
Yeah, in fact, want to add that, like, if you look at OpenAI's Codex, right, which GitHub's Copilot, I'm sure some of you would have heard, GitHub's Copilot has an AI pair programmer. It even generates your code, right? So it works collaboratively with the developer, and right. So it's not just limited to testing, but even development side, you're going to it's going to, you given your requirement, and it's going to give you the code as well, right? So almost like a no code platform from the development side. So that's where we are going into.
Oh, brilliant. I'll just summarize that and add on to that. Is from a business context, where when I see low code, no code, one is, I think Karate delivered low code 6 years ago when code was reduced by, I think, over 60% for writing test scripts. But low code, no code is really just solutions unlocking the ability for both developers and non-developers to build a class of applications they could not build before. And I think Venkatesh, both Peter and you touched on this beautifully, where it just drives that level of collaboration. I don't think anybody needs to feel intimidated or technically challenged with a no-code solution. It just helps developers do their jobs well when interacting with business stakeholders, product owners, or other non-technical people in their ecosystem. Is that a fair summary, Venkatesh, Peter? Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the citizen developer, right? That anyone who can dream up something can use this magical interface and actually get some work done. But I as you said, Kapil, I think there's this balance where a no-code tool can really bring product owners and the non-programmers in a typical product development team closer to the developers. Because if you step back and look at the whole world of software engineering, that's the biggest problem that most people are trying to solve, right? I mean, how do you get the vision of someone who came up with this product idea into working code? And then all the problems in the industry like BDD and requirements and all traceability is all trying to solve the problem of whether those thoughts were communicated correctly. So any attempt like no code to reduce the number of layers in between somebody's mind and shipping something to an end user is always welcome.
Oh, brilliant. No, thank you that. And Sharada, thank you for that wonderful question. As you can see, it did spark a very long and detailed response. So thank you so much. Our next question, is Karate Labs hiring? Yes, we are. The only qualification I'll put here is we are hiring for quality, as in the audience that is here for sure, not quantity. Our value system is not by being able to announce to the ecosystem that Karate Labs today has 100 employees and we are at $50 million revenue. No, even if we have 5, we want those 5 and their families to be part of our integrated ecosystem. But yes, we are hiring in product development and product engineering, not in sales, not in marketing. Any other questions? I need 3 more people to complete the poll, please, and then I can close the poll. Venkatesh, any other parting comments from your side? Do you see other teams? I think in your previous role, you said Fidelity also. I think before you joined Oracle, Fidelity, we know Fidelity uses, there are 130, a team of 130 that use karate at Fidelity. But these companies like Oracle are so big, many a times left does not know what right is doing. But do you see more and more in the forums you go to where people are talking about karate and of course our respected peers? Do you hear more and more of that?
Yes, I've heard even some of the other teams in Oracle are using karate. So I think there is definitely an adoption growing across teams.
Wonderful. Any parting messages for the audience? Anything else that you would like to share, which maybe we have not asked, Venkatesh? The floor is all yours, please.
No, I think it's great interacting with the audience as well as you guys, Peter and Kapil. Thanks for this opportunity. Looking forward to meet you guys soon.
No, thank you so much. Peter, one parting comment for you. Awesome tool, Peter. You have built a tool so simple and easy to use that amazes me with the simplicity it handles challenges of test automation without any additional plugin or extension. I've used many tools, but I must say karate is top notch in every aspect. Love to see upcoming updates and features you guys are building. Thank you, Dhananjay. Peter, would you like to make a comment to Dhananjay, please?
Oh, thank you so much, Dhananjay, for sharing. I think that's a great way to end the session and really appreciate it. It never gets tired to hear good feedback that keeps us going. So really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Venkatesh, from the first day we met you, you have been a man of very select words, very succinct in your responses, but very powerful. And you, as always, have done the same today. Thank you so much, Venkatesh. It's been a pleasure. The 14 months we have interacted with you, we have learned a lot, and we look forward to continuing to learn with you and for our association with you. Well, thank you so much, Venkatesh.
Good, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.